Welcome to the Trail Chasers podcast. I'm your host, Dean Horwitz, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. Each week, we'll be hitting the trails with some of South Africa's most inspiring trail runners, diving into the topics that matter most and uncovering the secrets of this incredible sport. Lace up your trail shoes and join me on this adventure. New episodes every week. All right, Pistol Pete, welcome to the Trail Chasers podcast. I think I've wanted to have you on here for a while. You know, this is a kind of a South African trail podcast. And as much as we kind of try and do the, like interviews with pros and interviews, about education and things like that, I think it's really great to kind of get a sense of what the South African trail community is, what it's about, the races, all of those interesting things. And I think you're definitely one of those characters that we can learn a lot from, and also just find out more about the community. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, for making time.
And your pleasure. Yeah.
And I like to start these things off with, tell me, who is Pistol Pete?
Yeah, well, I'm here, I guess, because I'm involved in the trail running community, but I'm a husband. You know my wife Taya quite well. I'm a father as of 10 months ago. So those are the things that most define me at the moment. But I'm a tennis coach, which I do professionally, and then I'm a outdoors lover.
Yeah,
I'm a cyclist. I'm a runner.
Amazing. And tell me, what is the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you on a run?
I haven't had too many really embarrassing things happen, but I guess in one of my first races near Swellendam, I was doing a race and I was midway through running with another runner, and the call of nature called quite heavily.
Yeah. And
I had to make a call to, and anyway, it all worked out fine. It wasn't that embarrassing, but I needed to do my thing, and I managed to get back to my running position. But I guess another one which wasn't embarrassing while it was happening because no one knew about it, but I was running a puffer, maybe my fourth or fifth puffer, and it was a super, super misty, overcast day. And I was in third, running by myself up the old wagon trail, and went into the Silvermine shortcut that connects you up to the Mountain High car park. And I missed the turn.
Oh, geez.
And literally, when I say it was misty, you couldn't see 5 meters in front of you. And I took a wrong turn on the path and ended up on a kind of a lookout, which was a dead end in the trail. And I couldn't get myself to backtrack and find out where I went wrong. So I thought I could go off trail and bushwhack and get onto a trail that would get me on the right track. And it was a very big error.
Oh, geez.
And for over an hour,
wow,
I was hacking around in bushes waist deep in Silvermine without seeing left or right, with no reception on my cell phone to fire up a map or call anyone. It was 9:30 or 9 in the morning, so I had all day, and I had a drink with me, and I had some food and a jacket, so I wasn't worried, but I was completely lost for an hour.
Wow.
So that was quite embarrassing. What ended up happening is I eventually found my way, found a trail, and got to the dam, and then got my way down to the car park an hour later. And I was in about 19th or 20th position. Jeez. And everyone at that checkpoint was like, "Where have you been? Are you okay?" Whatnot. And I said, "No, I'm fine." And it turned out to be one of my best runs ever, because I went from there and ran back into fourth position.
Oh, wow. Okay.
By the finish but that wasn't a proud moment getting lost like that on a race I've done many times.
Yeah. That's always the tricky ones, is when you know the trail and then you just.
I got a lot of slack from mates of mine.
And take me back to the beginning. How did you kind of initially get into running? Was it a road into trail, or was it straight into the trail? Where was the inspiration? How did it all get started?
So, I've always been an athlete in terms of tennis has been my game since I was a kid. I played college tennis in the US on a scholarship, and then played semi-professionally for 3 or 4 years, traveling, trying to make it my life, and supported myself and saw the world, which was amazing. But then came back and started coaching, and then got into cycling.
Yeah.
Which I did for 10 years, almost exclusively outside of tennis. It was my thing, road cycling, mountain biking, multiple Cape Epics, and I loved it. And then one of my cycling mates in Cape Town, because I'd moved here in 2011, initiated a snow finding mission.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the middle of winter. It was one of those super cold winters, and we went one Saturday afternoon with a couple of other cycling/running friends up Klip, my first time ever. And we found some ice initially, and then up top we found some snow, and it was just incredible. And then made our way across the mountain. Again, all of this my very first time. Now I know it like the back of my hand. And we went through Echo Valley and the Valley of the Red Gods, and went down Kasteelspoort at sunset, with the rain kind of over the ocean in the distance, and it was just incredible. And we centered on a couple of sections, and I managed to keep up with him. He was quite experienced. It's actually a mate of mine, Raul, who I visited now in Girona, and we reminisced about this expedition. And I got to the bottom, and I was just frothing. And that was my introduction, and I've been on the mountain ever since, and then entered a race or two, and that was almost 10 years ago.
Sure. And talk to me, I guess, a bit about the, from tennis to kind of cycling. How did that kind of happen? Was it just, you started small and got into it, or?
Yeah, I was coaching back in the day in Pretoria, and the fitness coach at our academy told me to enter the 94.7.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a bike. I mean, I rode bikes as a kid my whole life, but I wasn't a cyclist. I didn't have a bike for 10 years. And I entered the race without having a bike, then bought a mountain bike and did a couple of rides, 10, 15K rides, and then did the race in Joburg and loved it, pushed myself. And then when I compared my times to some of the friends that I had on their road bikes, I was like, nah, because I was on a mountain bike with knobblies and I'm very competitive. And then I thought, no, this can't be. So I kept training and got into some mountain bike races, and then got a road bike and just got racing, and then got onto a club team there and raced for quite a few years in that level or that group in the big races, and just loved it.
Yeah. And talk to me, I guess, going back to the trail running, what from the sort of tennis side did you bring into the trail running, and how did that kind of help you in that, it seems quite different worlds, but what did you?
It is different, but
take through?
Tennis has helped me in a few areas. I mean, again, nothing is proven or whatnot, but it's kind of theories where in tennis, it's quite a anaerobic sport in terms of the movements are very short and fast and change of direction. But in the same time, it's also aerobic, where some matches last, 3 to 4 hours, where endurance plays a part. But coming into trail running, I think in tennis, you've got to be very light on your feet with very quick change of direction. And that helps me on the single track, I think, to, instead of big, slow steps, to be able to be slightly flight-footed or flight of foot and maintain balance. It's helped me, I think. And then the other area where I think it's helped a lot is to maintain relatively injury-free, because I'm self-admittedly very poor at stretching and warming up and cooling down. That involves just having some beers. Yeah. But I haven't had any injuries over all these years of trail running. And I think finishing a long, big ultra or training, and instead of going to my desk that most people do and then remaining, stationary, where the muscles can tighten up, I'm out there on the court moving around all day, and the muscles kind of stay loose and stay warm and kind of warm down. I don't know if that, but I haven't been injured, and I think being busy most of the day on the court is a contributor to that. Yeah.
And talk to me, I guess, what does, trail running mean to you personally? I think it's quite interesting with you, it's not something you do professionally, or, competitively, but you're super competitive, and you just seem to be one of those guys who really just always does well. So talk to me, I guess, a bit about that competitiveness and kind of what it means.
Again, absolutely, there's nothing more at the end of it, regardless of how well you do, maybe there's a slightly bigger trophy than the next guy, or, I don't know. It's definitely not about whatever you can win, but I do love it out there, and I love pushing myself as hard as I can. One of my first ultra was in 2016, I think I did or 2015, I did the UTCT 65K in those days. It was the second year of the event, and it was going to be my longest run by far. And I got into it, and we went, and before you knew it, I was kind of at the front of the race, running with a trail running legend in AJ Calitz, who's unrelated, by the way. But we ran together with a small group of 3 or 4 guys at the front, and then it split up, and before you knew it, at Cecilia Forest, it was only the 2 of us left, and then he proceeded to drop me, but I hung on for second place in my first ultra, and I was just amazed, and I loved the feeling and the challenge and how broken I was afterwards, and it made me think that, jeepers, I could actually be okay in longer distance stuff. And then I think a few months later, I ran my first 3 peaks and almost won it. It's still one of my, I was leading going up to Lion's Head, and then I didn't know the mountain well enough, and I went the wrong way on Signal Hill Road again in the mist. I'm not good in mist. and then the Martin, a trail running legend who'd won it the previous year, had caught up to me, and then we ran up Lion's Head together, or hiked at that stage, and then I dropped him again, and again, not knowing the mountain and what was allowed and where the paths were, I was ahead of him, but he knew about a shortcut that was allowed and undercut me, and I ended up second, which was still an amazing result in my first 3 peaks. Just an amazing race, and it's become one of my absolute favorite races. Over the years. And
talk to me, I guess, about that. Take me back to the first trail. What was the first race that you did after kind of that initial discovery of it? What was that?
I think another race that I've done a lot is the Bastille Day Trail Running Festival, and I think before this Ultra Trail Cape Town that I spoke about, I ran the 25K at Bastille Day. And again, it was, as it always is in July in Franschhoek, it was cold and rainy and wet, and you had to run through rivers, but I loved it, and I pushed, and I think I actually won some money. I think I came third in that race. And I won like 800 or 900 rand, and it's just blown away. And I've since also gone back to that race every single year. And
at what stage, were you like, okay, I like the kind of the longer distances, the endurance kind of stuff?
Yeah, it was that ultra trail, that 65K at UTCT, and the 3 peaks, and a year later, I entered my first 100K, which I didn't finish at UTCT. I've had to call it at Hout Bay at 50 or 60K in. But then I figured out how much of a challenge and a chess game this whole thing is to get right in terms of effort management and nutrition and all that, and mental toughness or mental fortitude, which is a massive part in finishing these ultras.
And talk to me, I guess, a bit about that mental fortitude and that mental toughness that it kind of brings out in you.
Growing up playing tennis and challenging this, it plays a huge part in tennis as well, where if you give up on yourself in terms of your ability, and in tennis, you can come back from any situation. It's different than a trail run where if you're an hour behind in an ultra with 10Ks to go, doesn't matter how good you run, you're probably not going to win. But in tennis, you can be down 4 match points, 5-love in the third, and if you just keep winning and fighting back, you can win. But if you don't believe it, you got no chance. And I learned that, as a 15, 16-year-old in some matches where I was down match points and managed to somehow get back and win them, that you got to somehow believe and hold on and not give up. And in these trail running races, especially when things are hurting, you cramping, and you may be getting sick, which I have a tendency to do, you can't let that get the better of you. It's very easy to start throwing up and think that's the end of my race. But you've got to just hang on.
That's interesting that you kind of brought that up, because I think, obviously you've got the YouTube channel, which kind of, documents all of these things. And I guess a lot of people, you know, you don't really see what goes on behind the scenes in these kind of ultra races. So when you kind of watch your YouTube videos, there is that kind of like, cool, I'm feeling sick, I'm going to vomit, I'm going to throw up, and then I'm going to carry on. What kind of drives that? What, you know, that it's like, I'm not giving up on this kind of race?
You know, again, my Ultra Trail Cape Town is my favorite run of the year. It's in my opinion, it's the best race of the year in South Africa. It's put on as good as you can imagine across any international standard. And I've started the 100K 6 times, I think, there now, and I've finished 4. But the 2 that I had to pull out of, or that I did pull out of, I say had to, I've regretted it so much. Even a day later, but more so as time gone by, you start thinking about what you could have done. And if you just took a bit more time to make that decision and whatnot. So not that I judge anyone who pulls out. In fact, I still think in that same situation on the day, I would pull out. But the fact of, you know, pulling out of a race and not finishing it, it hurts so much afterwards, and the disappointment, not for what anyone else thinks, internally.
Yeah.
I want to avoid that at all costs to happen again.
Yeah.
So getting sick at a point in a race and sitting down and telling yourself that you're going to take an hour and just sit down and regroup if that's what it takes. Obviously, all kind of competitive situations are out the window, and you can make a comeback.
Yeah.
I've learned that as well, where I've felt terrible in races, terrible, and been overtaken by multiple runners, and not caring about that they overtaking me. I just want to get to the finish any way I can. And then somehow 2 hours later, I can't explain it, how, you know, your legs come back and you know, I'm charging past those same runners again and like without an explanation.
Yeah. And is there any kind of strategy for it, or is it kind of you just one foot in front of the other and keep going any way you can?
No. That's it. You've nailed it. And that's, you know, when I line up for a big race, and a 100K race, or I did my first 100 miler last year, you know, my wife, what she just keeps telling me is just one foot in front of the other. Don't stop. Just keep moving forward. And you just got to repeat that mantra in your head. And even if you do stop for an hour, you got to keep going again. And you can't look at how far it is to go. You just look at the next couple of steps.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you get there.
Amazing. And, you know, you've done a lot of races. What are kind of the most memorable races you've kind of done personally, but also, you know, generally as a race as a whole?
So Three Peaks Challenge has got a very special place in my heart, for the fact that it was one of the first races that I did and almost won, and then subsequently actually have managed to win twice.
Yeah.
Because it's not that I'm a competitive, and I'm a pretty good runner in that kind of race, but the really good guys, there's no prize money. There's you know, it's a difficult one to expend 5 or 6 hours of your energy, and that will take a few weeks of recovery. UTCT is always a few weeks afterwards or whatnot, so it doesn't always attract the very top runners. In fact, the year I had my very best run ever there, time-wise and feeling-wise, I came second, and I still maintain it's one of my best runs ever. I finished, 20 minutes behind Kane Riley, who ran it that year, and who, when he does line up, always wins. And that's amazing. But so Three Peaks is a special one. Again, Ultra Trail Cape Town, my favorite and best run on the calendar. But then a few years ago, after 3 years of trying, I got into the CCC, which is part of the Ultra Trail Mont Blanc Festival. And Taya came with me, and we spent a week in Chamonix soaking up the vibe, supporting other runners, and then getting around that course in a reasonable time, again with getting sick and death marching the last 20 Ks. It was amazing. It was amazing to be part of it. It's coming up next week again, and I'm envious of every runner who's there. Yeah.
And I guess, talk to me, about the difference between Cape Town races and then obviously broader South Africa, and then, you know, something like a UTMB.
Yeah, just the numbers is the big difference. And the trails are different. But I mean, I'm lining up there at that CCC race, and there's 2,000 runners.
Yeah.
It's just incomprehensible at a trail run here. You know, I mean, the 500-600 runners is a lot of runners at a trail running event, but you know, thousands is, I mean, that run over 100 Ks, I ran 16 and a half hours. And at almost no point, you know, was I by myself.
Yeah.
There's just runners around you, whether they're faster or slower, there's runners.
Yeah.
Aid stations are massive, massive marquees. It's like it's incredible.
Yeah.
But the trails that I have experienced overseas are generally not as technical as what we run, especially here in Cape Town on Table Mountain. Smoother trails, much bigger, longer climbs and descents. But I think training here and running here makes us better trail runners because of the technicality of the terrain and the roughness, and you got to focus. You can't look up, or you're gonna get tripped up.
Yeah.
And then when you get there and terrain is a bit smoother, you can run more freely and you are focused. Those are the big things.
Amazing. And South African wise, you know, have you done races outside of Cape Town? What have kind of been the favorites there?
Yeah, so I've not done a lot outside Cape Town. I spent my first few years and my calendar was, you know, pretty much amazing races, but I kept doing the same ones. And I did, you know, always did Bastille Day. I mixed up my distances there from the 15 to the 50. I've done all of them multiple times. Always do 3 Peaks, always do Puffer, always do Ultra Trail Cape Town. And then I did a couple of Otters. Yeah. Which were amazing. I did both directions, and that's just also an amazing bucket list trail run to do. Not a cheap exercise from Cape Town with entry and accommodation and travel, but wow, what a trail. And then because of that reason that I kept doing the same races, I really wanted to branch out a few years ago and made the mission to Ultra Trail Drakensberg, which blew my mind. I mean, it was just incredible. And I'm so glad now that I did start taking my GoPro on my runs, that I can document them and kind of go back to them, because, you know, that race started back then at the foot of Sani Pass. And the first thing you do is you climb up Sani Pass in the dark. And then as you're descending it, the sun's rising. And it's just an amazing sight to be running down Sani Pass at 6:30, 7 a.m. and the sun coming up over the mountains.
That's
UTD is a special one. And then I haven't done too much outside of Cape Town, to be honest. Yeah.
And memorable kind of moments in these kind of races, you know, are there any kind of that stand out?
So again, that sunrise down the Sani Pass is super memorable. In the Ultra Trail Cape Town, again, having my GoPro and documenting it, I was at the Hout Bay aid station midway through, and getting ready to go, and Ryan Sands was walking around there. He was racing that year, and I was like, geez, I wonder what he's doing here. But he raced at the front and somehow had a bad day, and maybe a bad stomach or something wasn't right, and he kind of pulled back and then just took it easy, and then he was looking to just finish the run, not give up, even though he was not going to run for the win. And he came, because we knew each other a little bit, and he came and asked me if he could run with me. I was like, with pleasure. And we ended up running from Hout Bay all the way to the finish. And that was just amazing, you know, talking and chatting, and that was quite a great experience.
That's amazing. And talk to me a bit about the GoPro. When did that start? You know, like what is the thinking behind that, and what's the response been like?
It's been, I can't remember how I started. I think I got one. I never had a video camera before, and my brother-in-law and my sister live in San Francisco, and they got one for me there on a sale. And I came back and I just started taking it on some training runs and things like that. And then, you know, the big thing, as you would know with doing this even, is one thing doing it, but editing it and putting it together is a whole nother ball game. And I kind of just got a little system going on my MacBook on iMovie, and it works. It's not amazing, but I can put a little movie together, and it was great for me to be able to go back and watch it. But what I found very quickly afterwards was, maybe the next year, or people who run races and who are looking to run races, go and look for content on YouTube.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had a lot of people comment and ask questions about these races after, finding my video. And in fact, some of the cool moments is running Ultra Trail Cape Town, where there's a huge international field. And during the run, having multiple runners in the field running with me come up to me and say, hey, thanks so much. I watched your video.
Yeah.
Helped me so much and good luck.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's been great.
Yeah. And you've developed quite a reputation in the Cape Town trail running community. Why do you think that is? And how did that come about?
I don't know. Do I have a reputation?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone said, okay, I'm going to interview Pete. Like everyone's like, oh, he's a legend of the trail running community.
I don't know. I enjoy trail running. I love the people involved. I take it seriously, but I also don't take it seriously. I mean, I train pretty hard, but I also don't train with structure. I've never had a coach. Maybe to my detriment, but it's very hard time-wise, and especially now with our little baby boy. But I run for the enjoyment of it. I generally try to run with friends. Doesn't matter if they want to do this or that, I'm in. And, I wear collared shirts and things because I don't think it makes a difference whether you run in a hydrophobic, quick, dry, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I have beers 3/4 of the way through my ultras because I love the change in taste from sweet stuff to something salty and savory, and the beers are so good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, people like it, and I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, so talk to me, I guess, about the collared shirts. Do you find that makes a difference, or like, is it just now become like the thing you kind of do? No,
well, the reason I wear them is because I feel it doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
And people have asked me and whatnot, and I'm like, maybe, and also a big thing that I do in ultras especially is I change my shirt multiple times because, and again, whether you're wearing a quick wick dry or something else, tech fabric, but you're getting sweat and the shirt's going to get wet.
Yeah.
And I love having a fresh shirt and a fresh cap or a bandana or something to put on. It just makes you feel fresher.
Yeah.
So whether it's a collared shirt or a t-shirt or a vest, I don't think it makes a difference. And whenever I run past people, they always chirp that I'm the best dressed and whatnot. And it's fun.
Yeah. And how did that start? Was it just a thing you did?
It just started, it started, I don't know. I had this collared shirt it's semi-technical. It's not like a dress shirt.
Yeah.
And I started wearing it. And in fact, I think before I started running at all, I watched the legendary Western States movie. What's it called? Unforgettable. Jeepers, I've just hit a blank. Famous Western States movie with Krupicka, Killian Jornet, Jeff Rose, and what's the other guy's name? Again, blank. And Krupicka was there, and they interviewed him before, and a lot of backstory, and he's there running in a mostly shirtless, but with some kind of collared shirt or a cut-off vest, and he had long hair, and it was super casual, and I thought, I like that vibe.
Yeah.
I didn't copy Krupicka, but he was like a cool guy, and I think he still is. It's a pity he's battled with injuries over the years, and then when I started running it, it drew some attention.
Yeah.
And Unbreakable is that movie's name, by the way.
There we go. Now we got
it. And I just continued, and then I thought, you know what? I like this vibe. I'm gonna be the guy who runs in a collared shirt.
Yeah. And
it's 10 years later, and I still do.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point. So talk to me, I guess, a bit about that, because you talk about what you wear doesn't matter, or, the beers and things like that. And I think we've become so hyper focused on the clothes you wear, the nutrition, all of that. So talk to me kind of about that aspect, and I guess not taking it so seriously.
Look, make no mistake. If you're a professional runner or a runner with real ambition to perform, I would I wouldn't have beers midway through the race. I wouldn't recommend it. I would focus much more seriously on your nutrition. Not that I don't. I mean, I drink a carb drink. I take my gels as I need. I sometimes struggle with it, which is why I still get sick. So I'm still working it out after all these years. But if you are really looking to perform, I would look at your nutrition. I would wear the clothing that is more streamlined or aero or stays dry for longer. But someone like me who runs competitively, but it's not really going to make a difference.
Yeah.
I like to be relaxed. The collared shirt. So it's just
having a good time.
Having a good time while taking it seriously.
Yeah, I like that. I like that balance. And how do you kind of choose your races that you do? Apart from obviously we've chatted about the ones you keep going back to. I guess how do you put a kind of race calendar together? And how has that kind of changed? Obviously now we chatted about having a child and things in your life that kind of would affect that.
A lot of it is logistics, I guess. As with most people, you've got to consider travel, time and cost, distance and terrain. We've got such amazing races in Cape Town that, you can do so many without even leaving the city or the surrounds. But I like races that, take you to high peaks. I do like races that have more challenging technical terrain as opposed to Jeep tracky gravel road running. Not that there's a lot of that, but I try to avoid those. And then again, as the years have gone by, trying to do something different that I haven't done before.
Yeah.
So I will look at a few races that I haven't done. I'd love to get up to Mpumalanga and do Mac in a year or two. I haven't really spoken about it much, but in the back of my mind, one of the original 100 milers in South Africa is the Washi in the Eastern Cape there, I think.
The road one.
It's a road trail.
Yeah.
So I think you look at what works out financially and time-wise in terms of how much time you can afford away from work. I mean, I do my own thing employment-wise. So if I take leave, I obviously don't get paid, which is fine as long as I work it in. And then races that put on a good show. Yeah.
Yeah. And what do you kind of have planned for the rest of the year?
Well, it is for the year because I haven't run this year at all.
Wow.
I've had actually my first half of the year was a bit cycling loaded. I got into the Cape Epic with one of my best mates, Nick, and suddenly we had 2 months to train. So I just rode my bike. Yeah. And even with the little boy at home, I did a feed at 3 a.m. and jumped on my bike and did 2 or 3 hours before him and Teo woke up. But I did it and we had a good time and whatnot. And since then, I've been focusing on fathering and being a dad and being around as much as I can because training takes time.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. So I don't like to leave my wife at home alone with him as much as I can help it. And I haven't done any races, in fact. But I've got a pretty loaded second half of the year with Puffer coming up in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to have absolutely no performance ambitions, but to enjoy it and to finish it. And then there's 3 peaks again, my 10th one in a row, if it works out, which I'm quite stoked about. And then again, Ultra Trail Cape Town.
Yeah. Which 100 or?
I've got to do the 100K, Dean, because I need, so my big goal, leading back to watching that Unbreakable movie before I was a runner, is to run Western States.
Yeah.
But getting into it is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So I'm on my 4th or 5th year of being in the lottery, and every year your ticket count doubles, but you got to have a qualifier. So Ultra Trail Cape Town 100K is my qualifier.
Yeah.
And so I've got to do that to maintain my place in the lottery. Yeah. So I will be doing the 100K again. And again, just to finish, I've got to get over the line.
Yeah. And talk to me about that allure of the 100 milers, like you've done one before?
I've done one. I did, again, I didn't have a qualifier yet, but midway through last year. And the only other local option available was the Carkloof 100 miler.
Okay.
to stay in the lottery for Western States. So I pulled the trigger and entered and tried to run as much as I could through the winter. And I went to Carkloof and I did it. It was I had a great first half, 80 Ks, lying in the top 5 and feeling good.
Yeah.
And then, when you get past 100, 110 Ks, things start getting very real. And I got sick again, and I never spent that much time on my legs. I did 28 hours and finished the last 4 or 5 hours in the dark and hallucinating and the whole story. It's incredible, but I did it. You asked about the allure. It's kind of when you get, it's crazy that, 100 milers are like not the average or the standard of ultra running. It's a ridiculous distance to run. But, in the US, they're running multiple 200 miler races. But anyway, the 100 miler allure for me, again, is just Western States. One of the originals, the challenge, the difficulty of getting in. I don't think I'm going to do many 100 milers.
Yeah.
I'd like to maybe do a couple. But I'd like to do that one and like to keep challenging myself at the 100K distance.
Yeah. And talk to me about the Carkloof 100 miler versus, say, the UTCT 100K. We've had the Carkloof guys on here before, and obviously we've chatted about the differences, but talk to me, I guess, from a personal experience.
It's different in a few ways. I think the trails are different. They're a little bit more runnable. That being said, because the Carkloof is an out and back run, so you do the same route that you do out, you do back, and the first 20 Ks, which is inevitably then the very last 20 Ks of Carkloof, was this loop kind of around, because you go through the start finish and then you got to go do this 20K thing. And it was, I did it at night, and because I was so tired, it just felt very, very tough in terms of it's up and down and a little bit of technicality involved, where the rest of the run was very runnable. This section right at the end was super tough.
Yeah. Lots
of ups, lots of downs. It felt technical. So that was, and again, really tough. But again, my first 100 miler, I can't compare to, I've never been that far into a run before.
Yeah.
And then, comparing it to Ultra Trail Cape Town is a tough one, because UTCT has got a lot of experience. Yeah. It's in its 10th year. They've learned from mistakes they've built up. They've got very good sponsors involved, and it's at a level of professionalism that it'll be unfair to compare Carkloof to, who's building its way up to a higher level event. The logistics, the aid stations, the support wasn't at the same level. But it's a much more kind of homely run, which I also appreciate, where the community comes in and mans aid stations, and which is phenomenal. So it's I don't think it's unfair to draw comparisons. Both phenomenal races.
And in terms of terrain, like as you say, like it was a bit technical, but obviously far more runnable than UTCT.
Far more runnable. Less need to think and watch every single step you take. The big difference is obviously the distance, but now UTCT has got a 100 miler, which has got to be one of the toughest in the country. I haven't entered yet, and
is it on the list?
It's on the list for the future. Taya has told me that I'm not allowed this year. She's good. She's good to support for the 100K again, but the 100 miler will have to wait. But I think it's a very tough one.
Yeah. And on paper, I guess it's like it's what's it, like 60 Ks. That's extra. But talk to me, I guess, kind of the difference between the 100 miler and the 100K. In terms of training, in terms of time in your feet, time in your legs, things like that, like what would be needed for you to kind of step up to that kind of level?
Without, like I said, I haven't been coached, but I do believe that it's very simple. What you said there is time on the legs.
Yeah.
Just volume.
Yeah.
You got to, I've ran a couple of comrades, and the difference thing in training for a marathon is just you got to be able to run longer.
Yeah.
Again, if you got speed ambitions, you got to manage the intervals and things. But for the general runner wanting to run, you got to be able to run far and long.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
distance isn't even the thing. It's about time.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes you're just hiking and it's unfair to think about how far you're going. You could be going up the mountain at a very slow pace, but it's going to take you an hour or two. And that hour or two is valuable time on the legs.
Yeah.
Even if you've only gone 5 or 6 Ks.
Yeah. And is that, do you find that quite enjoyable, the kind of the long hours out on the mountain?
I do. And mostly if I've got someone to do it with, someone who's training for a similar goal or something, the time you chat about, life. A lot of times you're not chatting about trail running, but about life, about friends and work and whatever else. And you get to know someone so much better after spending 6-7 hours on the mountain with them. And you're having a sandwich or something and you pit stop somewhere, fill up your bottles or grab an emergency Coke at a gas station. That's time that's hard to find elsewhere.
And talk to me, I guess, about Puffer and I suppose Three Peaks. There's quite a bit of runnable sections of that. That's maybe even like a bit road, jeep track kind of stuff. How do you kind of deal with that not being your kind of favorite parts of it?
Look, it's not. Yeah, you've got to. I deal with it okay. I'm not a terrible road runner. I just don't like it that much. But the Puffer is, the first 21 Ks is on the road.
Yeah.
And
how do you manage that?
It depends how you feel and how you've trained. I've generally been in okay shape. Again, the last time I did it, I wasn't, and I maybe went too fast. This year, I'll be taking it much easier. But you run fast.
Yeah.
Generally, my first Puffer was won by a good friend of mine, Nick De Beer, who as well, and he's excellent road runner. And he ran that 21 Ks, and from the gun, he was out of sight.
Yeah.
And then he's not the best trail runner, but he is very experienced trail runner. But whatever the real trail runners can make up, he'd done the damage on the road.
Yeah.
And then, he's won it a couple of times, in fact. So you've got to be able to run fast on the road, manage yourself on the trails, and then be strong enough towards the end over the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find, talking about that, do you find that you go out fast and then hold on at the end, or do you is it a bit more management and then the end you're strong and that's where you kind of make up the time?
Yeah, I'm a believer in, if someone had to ask me, I would suggest an even effort, management wise, where you can, but it's very hard to do.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do. I've generally always made the mistake of running fast at the beginning and hanging on for dear life towards the end. And most times I've kind of hung on. Sometimes the wheels have come off.
Yeah.
Famously at the Puffer, the last one I ran, I came into Constantia Neck with 20 Ks to go in the lead with 2 or 3 guys right around me. But I was at the front of the race and the wheels fell off over the mountain. And I wasn't, it's just nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And I think I ended up 20th or something. It didn't matter at all. I got to the finish, but it shows you how big a difference it can make if you manage your effort wrong.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also with all the experience, it's still so difficult.
Yeah, and you've got to also know where you are with your fitness and your training and what you can expect from yourself. But the Puff is a great run in terms of where it mixes the road and the trail like that.
Yeah. And talk to me, how do you feel about this year's Puffer in terms of, where it's that mountain section is not going to be there after Constantia Neck?
So, it's going to be different for me. Look, over the years that I've done Puffer, I've done 6 or 7, the route has changed a little bit every year, depending on if there's been a fire or there's been whatever issue, they've adjusted the route. My first one, we went all the way to the Constantiaberg mast and then approached Fluckenberg from that side. And then it changed where you go, into Takai and once. So it's changed a few times. This year will be the first time that I've done it where we're not going over the mountain.
Yeah.
And it should be a little shorter, I think, but the contour path is not an easy run. It's technical. You got to go over 400 stairs. It's on tired legs. It's going to be tough. So it could be a little shorter, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess talk to me then about your preparation for races. You know, you've said you're a bit undertrained this year, but do you kind of go into races like being pretty well prepared, I guess, in terms of training, but also knowing the sort of terrain and knowing what you're in for? Or is it like you enjoy kind of just going in and seeing how it goes?
Like again, depending on my preparation and fitness level, I would have had ambitions, and in previous years of Puffer or Three Peaks, I've had ambitions to get on the podium and say I'm going to run with the front guys from the start, and then the race will play out from there. But you got to give yourself a shot to be at the front when the moves get made, or when someone blows or doesn't. You can't do anything from 20 minutes back. But this year, 100%, I don't. I'm catching up on training. I've been again limited on time to get out, and I will have no ambitions at all but to enjoy the race and to try and not get sick, but enjoy it, run at a steady pace, and hopefully be able to run it in on Signal Hill Road and have a Jack Black at Vescus aid station.
Yeah.
You know, a good one. And enjoy the vibe at the finish instead of just collapsing in a heap.
Yeah. And talk to me about the South African trail running community. What do you think makes it so special?
Yeah, it's incredible. And again, people think I'm a real trail running veteran, but I actually, only started running when I was 40. So 10 years, the trail running scene has changed a lot, where it had a much more niche community, and it's been amazing to see how over the years it's just expanded, where the road running was a much bigger scene, and now it's just filtered out, and trail running, group runs are getting organized left, right, and center, and people are getting drawn into races for their first races, be it 10Ks or 15Ks. And people taking others under their wings and showing them around. It's amazing. And everyone at the finish, whether you are one of the fastest runners or the slowest ones, people, having beers at the finish or at the end of the run in the parking lot, chatting and getting along, and then friendships get formed outside of running. It's been amazing to see. And
positives and negatives. Do you think it's all been positive?
Jeez, I don't know what negative can be. Look, negative. Some people say sometimes the numbers, like Tuesday Trails is a run that I got introduced to in the early days through a mate of mine, and there was every week there was on the Facebook group, or someone would put their hand up to bring the beers, and it was 5 or 6 guys or 10 guys, and it, you go there now and there's hundreds of people or 100 people with 4 or 5 groups. It's amazing. Yeah. 5 years ago, I would go to Tuesday Trails and I'd know 90% of the runners there. If I go there this week, I'd probably know 10% of the runners. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's phenomenal.
Yeah. And what do you kind of attribute that to?
Trail running is awesome, to be honest. And a lot of people needed something to expose them to it or introduce them to it. Yeah. And then see that they can, you don't have to run 20Ks. You can go on a 5K run, 6K run for an hour and start and regroup with everyone else and chat while you do. Yeah. And then have beers at the finish. It's, I don't know. There's not much negative to say about it. And it's great to see so many people enjoying the mountain.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what advice would you give someone wanting to start trail running, someone, wanting to take on their first race?
I would advise them to try and connect with someone with a bit more experience, because that's what as I explained to you earlier about my first 3 peaks, not even knowing the mountain and the routes. So to try and do trail running by yourself, you don't know where to go. You don't know what's difficult, what's easy, how long it's going to take. So to connect with someone who's got a bit of experience and who knows the routes is gold. And then in getting involved in some groups and taking it slow and setting your ambitions progressively, to start with 5Ks and then building up to 15 and 20K runs. Yeah. That's the way to go.
And how valuable is that experience in trail running?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, again, understanding how to increase your focus when the terrain gets technical, and when you can open up and look around a bit when the terrain is open, like jeep tracks or gravel roads. and again, like I said, the knowledge of the mountain and the routes. If you've got an hour to run, if you go off on a route that is going to take you much longer, you know, you're going to get left, and you might not have a light with you or enough food, and you can get in trouble. So experience helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would you kind of say to your younger self, you know, looking back now?
Why didn't you start running sooner?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's been just great. Like I said, I only started when I was 40, and I wish I'd run since my whole life. I wish I'd run. No regrets. I cycled and I played tennis, but running and trail running specifically is amazing. You know, the places it can get you on foot that you can't get in a car and can't get on a bike. It's amazing.
Yeah. And do you think if you had started earlier, you know, you would have loved it as much? Or do you think there's an element, because that's also, for me, I also started quite late, and I often wonder, you know, is it a thing of like I started at the right time, or is it like a thing if I had started earlier, I would be, you know, I would have still loved it today?
No, I think we would have loved it the same.
Yeah.
I think we would have loved it the same. I think also things happen when they should happen.
Yeah.
I'm not a believer in if everything was great, and when I did run and the people I got introduced to, it's been amazing, and I'm forever thankful for it. I think if I started younger, I might have been a little bit more competitive in certain races, you know, being younger and stronger and whatnot. But I've got no regrets, and I'm just glad I got started.
Yeah, amazing. And, you know, we've chatted obviously about Western states. What else is on the kind of goals list?
I don't know. That's the big thing that's on the bucket list.
Yeah.
Again, and it's kind of the hard thing with that race is I don't have much control over it at all.
Yeah.
As long as I keep getting a qualifier under the belt and entering, you know, in 3 or 4 years, I technically should get in with the chances I've got, but it's also nothing's guaranteed. And by then, I hope I can run 100 miles. But, you know, like I said, I'd like to get up to Mpumalanga and do Mac, and there's other few races, and then other international events. If they combine with a holiday, a family holiday, that would be amazing. There's so many amazing races in Europe, but nothing specifically, to be honest. Yeah.
And how far in advance do you plan? So next year, you know, do you know what next year looks like, or is it?
No, so I'm hoping to go back to Ultra Trail Drakensberg, which I missed this year because of the little boy on the scene. I think we'll try and make a family weekend of it.
Yeah.
So that's on the scene, and then I'll find out in December when the lottery happens if I'm in for Western States, and that will be in June next year.
Yeah.
So if that does happen, that'll take the whole calendar will get arranged around that.
Yeah.
You know.
And you know, Vani, talk to me, I guess, about that balance. How do you kind of maintain that balance? What advice would you give to someone kind of, you know, that's not doing this professionally and kind of looking to kind of get that balance?
Just keep enjoying it. You know, the thing is, and even if I'm in full training mode for an ultra, I'll still ride my bike at least once a week. Generally, I do it a little bit more, you know, running heavy. I would run 4 times a week and ride twice. But that balance or that change up is invaluable to me too, because you sometimes can get burnt out with your intervals and your running and you start hurting and whatnot. And then for me, cycling with a different group of friends and you know, being non-weight bearing and flushing out the legs and having coffee after the rides or doing some epic mountain bike trails, it just changes it up for me from the running and keeps it fresh. Then I'm hungry and keen to get back on the run again.
Amazing.
So I'd recommend not take it too seriously, enjoy yourself, and mix it up.
Incredible. Well, thank you very much. This was amazing. Thank you.
All right. What a pleasure.
Feeling fired up after this incredible episode? Dive deeper into the world of trail running by exploring our other episodes, available wherever you get your podcasts. We're eagerly awaiting your feedback as well, so connect with us on Instagram @TrailChasersPod. Don't hold back. Like, comment, message, and share your thoughts. Until next week, keep chasing those trails.